Hello there, Nate Burry here again. I'd like to make another video based on the whole bricks and minifigs thing that's been going around, and I hate to say I told you so, but told you so. You see, I had the same experience with police officers or authority figures in the sense of assumptions based by a business owner without facts. Now, in my case, instead of it being some kind of merchandise, it was a settlement I had won originally with an employer during COVID, and then later was in 2022. I had sued an employer because they didn't want to pay me the funds, um, my funds, my paycheck, things like that. They didn't want to pay me. Kept giving excuses because they were basically going out of business. I am getting laid off, and so after I got laid off, I filed for unemployment, and I ended up collecting roughly like 10 grand. And then I filed for an extension, and I got approved. And then this is where it got weird because the owner went and called the police on me after they got served, um, like 2 weeks later, roughly. So it was like 10 days to be exact, I believe. But so on January 11th of 2022, I had won this claim. It was like $20,000. And in that time, when they called the police about this stolen money, they told the police that it was stolen cash from the ATM that had dial-up. Okay. Now, everybody knows dial-up issues when you're using the ATM. Okay. Now, the problem is I haven't been spoken to yet. Ever, actually. Was never spoken to. So you got a joint account with my name on it and my wife's name on it, and then my son, who's has Phelan-McDermott syndrome and has SSI in the same bank account. Okay, so when the employer called the police and said we stole this money, mind you, never mentioned a lawsuit or claim with an employee issue. Never once mentioned that. So the sheriff goes and gets a one named warrant in my wife's name and uses the one name warrant in my wife's name. My name is not on this warrant for a joint account, which they treated as a single user account. And then they go and charge her. And mind you, I still wasn't questioned, never spoken to, nothing. Even though I lawfully won it, I put that settlement in the account myself, and even when I told them that, they just ignored it because they already had the assumption that it was stolen. And that's the problem is just because your authority figure doesn't mean you have some kind of moral or ethics to do the right thing when it seems every human being nowadays just do what they want for themselves, regardless if it makes sense or doesn't make sense. Because in this situation, we have a joint bank account owned by two individuals, while one individual is being charged for theft for government funds that were awarded 1 year before this issue arose, while at the same time no one's questioning the business owners. Why are you calling the police a year later? Or why are you, why are now, don't you do taxes, things of that nature? And nothing. So basically, my account was the whole thing. All my money in my account was considered stolen, even though I wasn't talking to, or I guess I don't have no rights because we're married. So I guess now it's legal to use a single name warrant for another person and transform that warrant into, with no particularity, mind you, and then say it's legal, but how do you list particularity for an individual that's not on the warrant if the joint account has two people? And even though you can go and trace these funds because they're government funds, including, not limited to, my son's Social Security. That's right. My son's Social Security, who gets roughly $900 a month, was also called stolen. And this is what really pissed me off, is how do you go and not segregate an account when you know there is lawful funds for a disabled child who has Phelan-McDermott syndrome, and I am his caregiver because autistic kids, when they melt down, they're not easy to handle. And so this whole time, we didn't get to challenge our accusers. We didn't get to do anything but be belittled and told we're thieves, even though all the money came from the government. So the government called its own money lawful, at the same time treating one owner irrelevant for the same source of funds, while adjudicating those funds to another person on the same account as unlawful, which is retroactive criminalization from what I gathered. Funds that were legally lawful at the time for me, and I paid this attorney $25K roughly. Then a year later, roughly, in 2023, they're unlawful from South Dakota Unemployment Assistance Services. And so the point I'm saying is it doesn't matter. When you have authority figures and they have no moral conscience of doing the right thing and following procedures, it doesn't matter. People don't seem to understand that humans, even if they're wrong, they won't admit it. At least AI will tend to admit when it's wrong, or someone else will see it. But either way, when a court system, or like in reckless bin situation, they're going to do everything they can to make themselves not look bad, even go as far as using gray area doctrine, is what I call it, to say they did everything right, but it really doesn't make sense how everything could be right when nothing matches to what the laws say compared to the actions that's being presented. And I truly believe that authority figures need to be held more accountable for the power they wield. An extreme discipline needs to be attributed to, authority figures, because if not, they just are going to parade around with the power, no different than a power-hungry boss that we've all had one time or another in our life, that will micromanage everything you do, and if you don't do it by the book, even though they didn't do it by the book, they're still going to call you out. And it's the rules for thee and not for me, and that's how it goes with all these judges and lawyers and things like that, is because they are the gateway into the court system, no different than a computer tech, a salesman selling you a computer, and you have no idea what he's talking about, the computer tech mumbo jumbo, the CPU, GPU, RAM, and, get into the GeForce, GPUs, things of that nature. Not everybody's going to understand it. They're going to do their best to trust the person that's saying it's a good system. Same thing as a car or anything else. So why is it that when we go to a court where you have a jury, which is, I don't understand why we need a lawyer to explain a situation that they were never in, for one, to a bunch of people that are not lawyers, really. They're just everyday citizens in there to hear lawyers argue over facts, but yet when you ask a lawyer a question, they're not your lawyer. I don't know. Don't make sense to me, because in the whole court trial thing, they're speaking on the situation to people that they're not lawyers. So I think it's kind of backwards. I think people need to be more pro se and involved in their own rights, and not have someone else defend the rights, because you can't really know if that lawyer is going to really do honest work for you, just like any other occupation. And I understand the whole thing about a fool represent himself, but then again, a fool also would like to represent himself because he's not going to get himself ripped off from a lawyer that doesn't have his best interest or doesn't care for you or is just there to make a dollar. No different than a mechanic saying, "Oh, this car is good," but they sell you a lemon. Why does a lawyer get a pass or the court get a pass? To me, we citizens should be able to DIY it and not have some kind of legal mumbo jumbo jargon, no different than computer jargon that eventually we could understand. It's just, to me, it's just like a gateway they can extort and use. And then if you don't have enough money and let's say you're 2 years in your lawsuit or whatever you're doing and you don't have enough money to pay the lawyer, they're going to drop you like flies on shit. They're just going to, "Oh, sorry, we can't help you," even though they've been helping you for years. They just see you as a dollar sign. They don't see you as they care, especially when you have children or you have actual someone's trying to actually hurt you, in a way. And so I have seen the side where a power 100% gets abused and common sense doesn't reign, and the people in the courthouse know this, and they can use whatever loopholes, gray area logic, and get away with it. And when you don't know the process, how do you know if the lawyer is going to go right about you if you don't understand what he's doing? That's, to me, is no different than any other occupation in this world, and I just knew this is going to get worse until we have some kind of accountability measure where if you don't follow the rules and you use things like calling the police on someone after an unemployment feud and you lose a claim, and then you call the police on said person and you don't even ask said person about why you calling the police 10 months later to a year later to report a crime of cash money being missing when you lost a settlement and a settlement is electronically given. These are the things that you have to be extremely careful and actually look into and not just assume. And in this case, Bricks and Minifigs, they assume, they don't care because they know they've been doing it probably a long time and they know no one's going to say anything. And it's just, this is the kind of stuff that happens all over our country, especially in small areas, because not a lot of bigger places care to look. Until you're affected, it seems, then I guess it matters, and we've seen that across the pond, and now we're seeing it here. I think certain stipulations need to be met with qualified immunity and other things where if common sense, like the laws of logic, and don't align with your actions, then something needs to be done. Because my son Ethan, he's nonverbal, has Phelan-McDermott syndrome, and no one's gonna defend him. He can't even defend himself. He don't even understand what's going on. He's has incognitive abilities, can't reason, has all kinds of issues with understanding, even changing his clothes, things like that. He's still in pull-ups, and it's sad that why wouldn't you take the time and effort to actually investigate, but instead of being lazy and just assuming the employer or said person isn't lying, as in evident in this whole bin and minifigs things. And I'm sure there's other, across the pond with that gentleman being stabbed and just left. It's horrible, but this is the reality: is there's no empathy from authority figures because they are the empathy. They control the empathy. They You know, they give it to where their own opinions, I guess. They give it to their own opinions, and their opinions outweigh the masses, you know, regardless if it doesn't make sense. And, you know, even when someone's extremely badly hurt or in need of medical attention, let's just arrest you. And the same thing with me. I'm an invisible person on my own bank account. And so now I'm still, I'm going to call it trolling the court, because they basically did that to me, hijacked my account, excluded me like I was an invisible person, called everything in my joint bank account stolen, and then blamed it on my wife. And then, I mean, of course, it was found not guilty or acquitted or whatever you want to call it, because you can't have two people and one person being subjected to it. It just, how? But now the problem the court has is they called money I legally won from a claim unlawful, while at the same time not segregating those funds, which is retroactive criminalization, putting criminal intent to money that was given at the time lawful but later not lawful. This is the issue, and this is what they can do. And, you know, people tend to assume that just because you're an authority figure, you're going to do the right thing, and that's not the case throughout history. People tend to abuse power, and that's just how it goes, you know. Well, I just had to put my thoughts here. Kind of bothering me, but I appreciate it if you listen to this. Yeah. So right now, I had a hearing May 26th, and I basically told a judge a non-crime cannot commit a crime. And I hope you understood what I meant, because I'm not dead, and a joint account is a joint account, not a sole account. Can you imagine if I can just have a joint property or joint custody and just go, oh, our arrangement, our contract's not an issue, it's mine now. It's my sole property now. That's basically what happened to me. And that's basically what's happening to bricks and minifigs. And until police have more of a serious type of accountability if you don't follow the rules, you're going to be in serious trouble. And this is just going to keep happening no matter what. Remember, with great power comes great responsibility, right, guys? Have a good day.